Another county in Georgia has found more than 3,000 uncounted ballots. This now in Fayette County. Remember, initially it was 2,600 uncounted ballots.
These, by the way, are not while we've recounted and we've made a calculation or tabulation error. This is, oh, by the way, we have found 6,000 votes.
And that's only 3 out of Georgia's 159 counties, and they're rushing to try and get this recount done.
By tonight. I want to know how many more thumb drives are out there, because these aren't just being discovered in like big urban cities. These are being discovered in small towns.
How in the world can the Secretary of State certify that this election has any kind of integrity? I have no idea. We've got, as Jordan mentioned, 159 counties in the state of Georgia. How in the world can you say that there are not votes somewhere creeping around in the Okefenokee swamp, down in Folkestone, Georgia, down in Waycross and so forth, and certify by tonight that this was a valid election?
We are 2 weeks and a day from the election of the President of the United States. It took place 2 weeks and a day ago. And in Georgia, who couldn't get the ballot and counting that done that night correctly, and now we find out there was not a water main break in Fulton County, and all that go-home stuff was a...
They were still counting votes.
They were still counting votes, of course. The whole thing's a fraud. And what they need to do is say, you know what? This is a mess. We need to redo this or throw it to the legislature, whatever the Constitution of the state of Georgia says.
That they have failed as a state to carry out an election. They have failed as a state
to carry out a fair, full election compliant with the United States Constitution's mandates.
Remember when we said before the election that it was just such a terrible idea to rush through all these last-minute changes? This is why, Jay. I mean, when you rush through changes and states operate elections based on processes that they haven't gotten used to, you get confusion like this. I mean, I'm with Jordan. I mean, come on. How many more of these memory drives are we going to come up with? And, Jay, are we going to come up with them before or after the certification takes place?
Ginny Beth Martin from Tea Party Patriots, good friend of ours, she called. She's from Georgia. She called a few of these Secretary of State election officials to say, like, hey, what numbers are you going to actually report? She put the audio out so you can hear it. Take a listen.
And did your numbers, were they exactly the same?
No.
Which ones will be counted as the official numbers?
The election night numbers.
Why is that?
You'll have to ask the state why that is, ma'am. I don't know.
And is it the state who's telling you that that's the numbers that'll be?
You'll have to talk to the state, ma'am.
But your numbers were not the same.
No.
If it's the election night, when did the election night end? Because on election night, Trump was leading, and it wasn't until November 6th, 3 days after the election, that that Joe Biden actually took the lead in Georgia. When did the election night actually ever end? Has it ended?
I think there's going to be a strong call for every single state to conduct a top-to-bottom review of their election process, because this just cannot happen. We cannot have it this far after an election that American voters still have not had their vote cast. We begged those voters to stay in line, Jay. That's what everybody said. Go in the rain, stand in line, have your vote counted. Well, if we're going to tell voters to do that, Jay, we sure better count their vote once they cast it.
I would like a audit recount in an audit find. That's what I would call it, an audit find. Not just looking at the ballots. I want to find the ballots. I want an audit find of ballots that are missing in all of the counties in Georgia. And then a directive from the Secretary of State that the number you certify to the Secretary of State is not the election night number. It is the corrected number, including those ballots that have now been found.
To say that I'm going to report the election day find nullifies and makes completely absurd any recount or any audit or recanvassing. Why would you have that if you're going to approve and certify a number that you know is wrong?
In one county, half the votes were on one of the thumb drives and had not yet been counted yet.
If you have a county or a precinct where there's 6,000 for the normal voting and only 3,000 showed up to vote that day, would you think maybe there's something there? Maybe there's ballots missing? And then guess what? A recount's ordered. Surprise, we find it. And guess what? If there was no recount ordered, those votes wouldn't have counted.
Never found because they did a canvass.
6,000 citizens at least in Georgia. And if they certify it tonight, shame on them, and that's why we're going to court. I am holding in my hand a thumb drive that could contain 3,000 votes. It doesn't. This probably contains legal briefs. But let me tell you this. I want you to think about this for just a moment. Are these in people's drawers in the election offices? I want to know, where did they find them? How did they notice that we may be missing a thumb drive? This is a joke on the American people, except it's affecting an election for the presidency and 2 United States senators.
All I want is my state's election to have integrity and confidence. I don't have that in this election in Georgia today. I have every suspicion that something wrong was done and something irregular took place. The Secretary of State obviously felt the same way because he ordered a recount and a recanvass, but part of that needs to be what you just said. Every thumb drive, everything that reflects a ballot needs to be accounted for from its origin to where it ended up.
I'm holding up the evidence here again because there's a point here, and it's called the chain of custody. In the law, we talk about the chain of custody. When we admit evidence in a criminal case, Andy, we have to prove the chain of custody, that this piece of evidence was handled by such and such, certified, docketed, entered, locked away, that it was picked up by so-and-so with a witness, carried to such and such, and this is then deemed to be a chain of custody has been met. I think that we have the right now to know the chain of custody of every single one of these thumb drives. In Georgia, every single one of these thumb drives have to be determined. And if it takes a court order to do it, we should get it. Because I'm holding in my hand a little 2-inch thumb drive that literally could change an election.